I wasn't fired. That would have made noise. Instead, they erased me quietly, one access level at a time. They say you don't notice the small cracks until the wall collapses. Looking back, I know now that everything changed the moment she stepped through the front doors. No keycard, no escort, just a blinding confidence wrapped in a cropped blazer and white sneakers that didn't belong in a building like Alderton. That morning, I arrived early, like I always did. My name's Derek Shaw. I'm 49 years old, and up until that moment, I was the chief systems architect at Alderton Logistics Systems, 21 years, 4 major system overhauls, and more server recoveries than I can count. I was the one they called when everything broke, but lately, no one had been calling. My past still buzzed green at the security gate, and my usual double espresso from the kiosk downstairs warmed my fingers against the late March chill of Toronto. The air inside the building was too still for a Monday. The receptionist didn't look up. No elevator chimes, no greetings, just the hum of climate control, and something quieter beneath it, a silence too symmetrical to be accidental. I was halfway through my first sip when the glass doors turned. She walked in like she owned the place, blonde waves tucked under designer sunglasses, a purse slung too casually over one shoulder. She didn't slow down. The front desk didn't stop her. Security didn't blink. Instead, they stood aside as Robert Elkins, the CEO, the man who once called a VP dispensable to his face, strode across the marble floor to greet her. He smiled. Genuinely, I hadn't seen that expression from him in years, and certainly never toward me. I froze by the elevators, coffee in one hand, laptop bag weighing down the other. She looked like she was 25, maybe younger, a little too polished to be an intern, and far too relaxed to be visiting for the first time. The hallway was silent, but something inside me started buzzing, an old instinct, the kind you build from 2 decades of fixing things before they crash. She and Robert stopped just a few feet from me. I didn't move. She didn't look up until the last moment, then turned and cocked her head like she'd seen me in a file. "You must be Derek," she said sweetly, like we were long-lost co-workers. I nodded, too caught off guard to form a reply. My mind tried to piece together who she was marketing. PR, some new consultant. Then came the sentence that would replay in my mind for weeks afterward. "You're the one I'm replacing, right?" My mouth went dry, not from fear at least, not immediately. It was something quieter, sharper, like the static that builds before a server blows. I forced a chuckle. "I don't think we've met," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "And I haven't heard anything about any transitions." She shrugged, like it was a game. "Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything yet. I'm just shadowing Uncle Rob for now." "Uncle Rob." She winked, then turned and stepped into the elevator alongside the CEO. The doors closed behind them with a soft hush that felt louder than anything I'd heard all morning. I stood there longer than I should have, coffee cooling in my hand, my badge suddenly heavier around my neck. Something had already shifted. And whatever it was, it had already begun. Just as I turned toward the elevator bank, the corner of my screen buzzed. A notification, one line, no subject, no sender. Just a timestamp and a location. No one ever used conference room B unless someone was being quietly removed. Today, it was my turn. I'd walked past that room 100 times in my career, always with a quiet kind of reverence, like people tiptoeing past a closed door at a funeral home. No one used it for real meetings. No memos ever mentioned it. It just existed, half lit and always ready for something. Final. When I stepped in, the first thing I noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that fills a room just after something has already happened. Robert Elkins sat at the head of the table, hands clasped, staring at the tabletop like it might do the talking for him. To his left was Dana, our HR director, her smile the corporate kind, tight-lipped and neutral, the kind people train for in webinars titled Difficult Conversations, managing transitions with empathy. To Robert's right, Lauren Elkins. She wasn't shadowing anyone now. She was seated where our chief technology officer used to sit, legs crossed, tablet glowing in her lap. Looking like she'd been born into the chair, I closed the door behind me. It made a sound I hadn't expected, soft, padded, like the room didn't want anyone outside to hear what was coming. "Derek," Robert said, voice clipped and too careful, like he'd practiced it a dozen times. You've been with us a long time, longer than most people stay in this industry. I nodded, unsure if I was being honored or prepped for execution. He continued, but companies grow, technology evolves, and leadership needs to reflect the future we're building toward. There it was, the subtle execution, the kind that doesn't leave bruises but erases your name from the foundation you helped pour. Dana leaned forward, voice smooth as the folder she slid across the table. This isn't about performance, Derek. It's about realignment. A brand transition. The same language they used in press releases when executives vanished overnight and were replaced by hashtags and buzzwords. I didn't say a word. I looked at the folder, my name printed clean across the top. Inside, a letter dressed in legal language and silence. A generous exit package, an NDA already pre-signed by them, a line of copy that tried to frame this as mutual amicable. Then I turned to the third page, the one that listed signatures, Robert Elkins, Dana Gray, and one more, Julian Tran. My jaw locked. Julian, the same man I'd pulled through his first system outage, the guy I'd mentored through 2 promotions, who'd once given a toast at my 15th work anniversary about how Derek keeps the backbone of this company running. His signature was the cleanest of them all. I looked back up at Robert. So, this is it. He nodded, as if the conversation had played out exactly as he'd hoped, neatly, quietly, without resistance. Lauren leaned forward then, smiling like she'd just unwrapped a gift she didn't know how to use. I'm really excited to learn from everything you've built. Derek, what a foundation to inherit. As if I'd died. The word bounced around the room, leaving a taste of cold steel in my mouth. I didn't reply. I didn't trust what might come out. Dana offered a controlled nod. Of course, you're welcome to say goodbye to your team, but we ask that you keep things neutral. Neutral, as if 21 years of building systems, fixing what others broke, guiding people through launches and meltdowns, could be summed up in a LinkedIn update and a half-hearted farewell. I stood slowly, picked up the folder, not because I accepted it, but because I didn't want to leave it behind like a stain. I gave a small nod, not agreement, just acknowledgement, and walked out. The hallway outside felt different, dimmer, like someone had turned the brightness down on the building the second I was pushed out of its ecosystem. A few employees passed me. No one made eye contact. Not even the junior developer I'd helped debug a critical shipping loop last Friday. Back in my office, I started packing. Carefully, deliberately, my plant, the framed photo of my dog, Riley, the chip mug that read System Whisperer, 21 years reduced to a cardboard box. But I wasn't angry, not yet. Something colder was beginning to take its place, something cleaner. I was placing my last notebook into the box when a shadow paused in the doorway. Julian. He stepped in halfway, shoulders hunched, eyes already apologizing before his mouth opened. I didn't speak. I waited. He looked at me, then down. Derek, I didn't know how else to handle it. 4 days ago, she said flatly. They pulled your admin rights 4 days ago. I stared at Julian for a beat too long. 4 days. They'd started cutting me out before I even knew there was a knife in the room. My mind raced, not in panic, but in calculation. What else did they change? I asked, voice low. Julian looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He leaned against the door frame, hands buried in his pockets like they might hide his guilt. They shifted some routing logs, removed your access to the backup index, disabled your alert triggers. I nodded slowly. And you signed off on it. He swallowed. It came from above. Lauren presented it as part of the Next Gen Streamline initiative, thus said it was temporary. I almost laughed. I'd written that term 6 months ago for an entirely different project. Now they were using it to dismantle me. I turned back to my desk. Beneath the monitor, tucked into the corner, was a small USB key, 1 terabyte, encrypted twice, with an isolated boot environment built to run offline. I picked it up slowly. I hadn't used it in years, not since the early GenSink trials, but it held something even Lauren didn't know existed, a ghost node. See, I never trusted the mainframe completely, not when so many hands had started dipping into it. So I'd created a parallel system during the 3rd overhaul, something to simulate every change in a shadow environment before going live. It mirrored everything in near real time, but never interacted with the core. Just watched, logged, learned. They hadn't pulled access to that. Yet, Julian, I said without looking at him, did you notice any code-based changes in the last 72 hours? He shook his head. No deployments, just UI tweaks, lies, or maybe just ignorance. I kept my tone calm. Can you get me the last 3 commits to the zinc pipeline? He hesitated. I don't know if you owe me that much, I said, turning to face him now. At least give me the dignity of seeing how you helped them dismantle my work. He flinched, then nodded. I'll email it. From my personal account, I watched him leave, back hunched like the guilt was pulling him down. As soon as the hallway was clear, I locked the door and opened my personal rig, the one not connected to Alderton's cloud. The ghost node lit up like it had been waiting for me. There it was. Every commit, every rollback, every hidden script that had been deployed without audit logs. Lauren had been smart. She'd bypassed the traditional deployment registry, masked her changes through an auxiliary test channel, but the node had caught it all. She wasn't just replacing me. She was cannibalizing my architecture, renaming core processes, rerouting protocol authority, and worst of all, stripping safety protocols I'd spent years embedding. It was worse than I thought. She didn't understand what she was dismantling, and that's when I knew she was going to break it. Not intentionally, not with malice, but with arrogance. I sat back in my chair, the soft hum of the ghost node filling the room like an old friend clearing its throat. My hands moved without thinking. I opened the Cascade lock framework I'd coded during a system stress test in 2010. It was meant to activate only if admin rights were revoked, while simultaneous structural changes occurred. It didn't destroy anything, it just paused, froze the system in its last stable state. A protective failsafe, the kind of thing only legacy architects cared to build. And I'd never told anyone it existed. I glanced down at the USB key, then at the cardboard box beside my desk. They thought I was done. Good. Let them believe that. Let them forget how quietly a system fights back when it's designed by someone who saw this coming. As I shut down the rig, a new email popped into my inbox. From Julian Tran. Subject, no subject. Attachment, Zinc Redire Final. I downloaded it, extracted the script, and there it was confirmation. She wasn't ready. None of them were. I renamed the Ghost Node archive. She stood on stage like she owned the future. 3 clicks later, the system reminded her who built it. The last time I set foot in Alderton's auditorium, it was for a mandatory compliance briefing. Today, I watched it through a live stream window, the feed bouncing between phone cameras, and a shaky drone hovering just above the event tent on the rooftop. It was the official launch of GenSink Core, the system I had architected, rewritten, and refined for over a decade. Except now, it had a new face. Lauren Elkins took the stage like she belonged to it, sleek, rehearsed, flanked by executives who only months ago couldn't pronounce half the acronyms I embedded into the back end. She talked fast and smiled wide, pulling in buzzwords like adaptive logistics, next-gen infrastructure, and autonomous predictive layers. She even quoted lines I had written in internal memos, lines no one had ever approved for public use. I sat alone in my condo, a mug of black coffee cooling at my side, watching her reach for a wireless clicker. GenSink Core, she declared, represents a full departure from legacy dependencies. What you'll see today is a seamless, real-time simulation powered entirely by new predictive logic. She clicked once. A digital twin of Alderton's shipping grid appeared behind her, beautiful, animated, entirely cosmetic. She clicked again. A breakdown of active modules and live routing logic faded in. She clicked a third time. That's when it started. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a hesitation. The model behind her stuttered. A route line disappeared. One of the automated nodes blinked red for a split second, then rebooted. A few executives exchanged glances. Lauren kept smiling. Then the drone feed zoomed closer, and that's when the API gate log leaked into the simulation display. 3 error strings in succession, 104 timeout. Null pointer at core sync. Fallback authorization failed. She paused, looked behind her, maybe thinking the system just needed a moment. But that's the thing about removing safeguards. When a system isn't told how to fail, it simply does. The cascade lock had kicked in, not by sabotage, not by code injection, But by design mine, GenSink Core wasn't meant to run without its safety scaffolds. I'd written it with what I called legacy conscience, a deep protocol layer that validated stability based on trigger frequency and admin continuity. When Lauren pulled the old root protocols and inserted her own logic without understanding the handshake layers, the system defaulted to protect mode, freeze everything, preserve the last stable state, broadcast internal logs to register debug screens. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just watched. My work wasn't revenge. It was a reminder. You don't build a bridge by tearing out the steel beams and replacing them with cardboard because the cardboard looks better in the marketing deck. My phone buzzed. Priya Singh, a partner at Phoenix Tech. We'd worked together before. She'd been following Lauren's takeover with growing curiosity. Her message was short. "You seeing this?" I replied. "Live." Then I opened my laptop. My ghost node had lit up again, not just recording, reacting. The failsafe triggered a rollback simulation and launched an integrity alert. The best part, it sent a private notification to every senior executive's inbox, not from me, but from the system itself. Subject line: unauthorized modifications detected. Legacy stability compromised. I'd written that line 5 years ago. I never thought I'd see it used in production. I leaned back, hands behind my head, staring out at the skyline. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like gravity returning to its right place. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was earned. Then, the phone rang. Unknown caller. I answered. "Derek," a voice said, low and hoarse. "It's Robert." He called me by my first name for the first time in 21 years, but it was already too late. I didn't answer him at first. I let the silence hang long enough to remind him that calling me now wasn't a favor, it was a consequence. "Derek," he asked again. His voice had lost its edge. All the polish from the stage, the boardroom, the press releases, it was gone. What remained was just a man with a crisis he couldn't code his way out of. I saw the presentation. I said, "You launched something half-built and stripped down. What did you expect?" There was a pause. Then, carefully, he replied, "We need your help." It wasn't a question. It wasn't an apology either. Just a quiet collapse of ego. I should have hung up. I didn't. Instead, I asked, "And Lauren, she's been asked to take a leave." Robert said quickly, as if speeding through the words would make them sting less. "Internal review. Nothing formal. Yet. Translation. She embarrassed the company and now they were scrambling to clean up after her without admitting to the mess. "I'm not your patch," I said. "You're the only one who understands how it was built," he replied. That much was true. But I wasn't interested in being their fix. Not anymore. Phoenix already made me an offer. I said. That got his attention. He cleared his throat. Phoenix. They saw the live stream. They also saw the architecture behind it. Silence again. I could hear his breath catch, the way it did when he was about to lose something he assumed he owned. "Derek," he said, voice low now, "we're willing to renegotiate. If you come back." "I'm not coming back," I said. I meant it. I wasn't walking through that front door again as an employee. I'd already crossed that line the moment I packed my box, but I could do one better. "There's a proposal on your desk." I told him. "Just sent it. Check your email." Pause. Typing sounds, then a long, quiet exhale. "You want to license the system to us under Phoenix's banner." I clarified. "You can call it partnership, co-architecture, whatever PR needs, but it runs through my terms, my infrastructure, and my protocols." His voice was a whisper now. "And the rights? I hold the rights, per the Ghost Node records, time-stamped, logged, digitally signed." He didn't argue, because he couldn't. The system had spoken louder than either of us. The call ended not with a goodbye, but with a sigh. A few hours later, I was in a different building. Phoenix's headquarters was sleeker, smaller, but buzzing with energy. Priya met me in the lobby with a handshake and an unspoken question in her eyes. "You really gonna go through with it?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm not trying to take them down. Just take back what's mine." She smiled. "There's room upstairs. Full build team. Your call on how we run this." I was halfway up the elevator when my phone buzzed again. "Julian." I hesitated, then picked up. "I'm sorry." He said. "No preamble." "I know," I replied. "You don't have to forgive me. I want to help fix it." And for once, I believed him. Maybe guilt was a better teacher than ambition. We're rebuilding it from scratch. I said, "Clean slate." But this time, no shortcuts, a pause. Then, I am in. Later that night, I sat alone at my new desk. The window overlooked a different skyline, one that didn't carry the weight of 21 years. I opened my backpack and pulled out one last thing I hadn't unpacked until now. A pen, old, metallic, engraved with the Alderton logo, a 10-year anniversary gift. Back then, it had meant something. Not anymore. I clicked it once, then set it on the table beside a fresh Phoenix notebook. Old loyalties didn't matter. What I built next the system wasn't mine anymore. But what came after would be, a few months passed, Toronto's skyline began to change color, fading from gray winter into the soft gold of spring. I watched it happen from the window of a new office. Different floor, different company, different future. The old life felt like another person's story now, one I could finally close without bitterness. The new system we built wasn't a reboot, it was a rethink. Phoenix gave me a clean slate, and this time, I wasn't interested in preserving anything from Alderton's infrastructure. No legacy tags, no carried over logic. We started with principles, transparency, resilience, and modular growth, things no one had time for when they were chasing quarterly targets. I didn't rush, neither did the team. I worked with Priya, Julian, and a small unit of engineers who weren't afraid to say, I don't know which. Ironically, made them better architects than half the senior staff I used to mentor. On paper, I was the chief technology strategist. In practice, I was a builder again. Phoenix called our platform North Glass. It wasn't flashy. It didn't promise to change the world. But in every line of code, it asked one quiet question. What happens when trust is earned, not assumed? Then one morning, 3 months after launch, I got a notification. Alderton had filed for full restructuring. It wasn't public yet, but the signs were there: partner withdrawals, board reshuffles, an internal memo that leaked faster than they could control. Their GenSink initiative had bled too much credibility. After Lauren's public silence and Robert's abrupt retirement, the company's core systems had never fully stabilized. The irony, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. They hadn't lost because I sabotaged them. They'd lost because they cut corners and erased context. They'd replaced understanding with urgency, and the system had responded accordingly. That night, I took a walk through downtown just to see the city the way I hadn't in years without a badge, a deadline, or a meeting in my head. Eventually, my steps took me past Alderton's tower. The lights on the top floor were still on. Maybe someone was trying to salvage what remained. Or maybe someone, like me once, believed they could still fix it. I crossed the street and stood across from the building. No bitterness, no speech, just silence. Then, in the glow of the streetlight, I saw it. A framed photo in the lobby display wall, a collage of foundational architects that had been there since the 15th anniversary gala. My face still there, faded a little, but not removed. Some part of them remembered. Or maybe they just forgot to take it down. Either way, it didn't matter. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a new pen, matte black, simple, the kind you don't get from a company, the kind you buy for yourself. I turned away. Some legacies deserve to be archived. But the future gets written from scratch. There's a special kind of silence that comes after betrayal. It's not just grief, it's the shock of being erased without warning. I lived through that silence, but I also came out the other side. This wasn't just my story, it's one of thousands. Every day, people are pushed out quietly, overlooked, replaced by shortcuts or louder voices. If you've ever felt that, if you're feeling it now, you're not alone. What I learned is simple: strategy outlasts sabotage. And staying calm isn't weakness, it's power in its most focused form. You don't need to burn everything down. You just need to build something they can't ignore. Thank you for watching until the end. Stories like these matter because they remind us what dignity, patience, and quiet strength can really do. If this story resonated with you, type 1 in the comments and follow for more. And if you've been through something similar, feel free to share. Your voice could be the reason someone else decides not to give up.